All right, so let's start with the Android device management. So the minimum requirement for Android device management is that the device has to be Android 2.3 or later versions. So although we actually do support Android 2.3 and later versions, some of the features may not really work on older versions of Androids. So recommended version, I should say, it's probably Android 5 or later versions, although you could still, the minimum requirement is still Android 2.3. All right, so best practices as recommended by Hexnode to manage the devices. So we got Android Enterprise on the left and we got Zero Touch on the right. So what exactly is Android Enterprise? So it's actually a free service from Google which we have integration with. So Android Enterprise actually would allow you to easily deploy the applications onto your devices and pretty much any application that's pretty much any device out there. You could have advanced configuration on them if you had enrolled the devices through Android Enterprise. And if you actually combine that with the Zero Touch deployment, it's quite similar, if you ask me, it's actually quite similar to the Apple DEP-based enrollment. So you can have, these devices could still be in the boxes, they could be taken out from the boxes, connect to a Wi-Fi network, and you could just start to deploy the devices from that point on. Just have, once you are connected to a Wi-Fi network, once the devices are actually online, it would have the MDM configurations downloaded to your phones. So the Android Enterprise can be classified into two. So it's mainly like two different ways you can get your devices added to the Android Enterprise account. So first up, we have the profile owner method. So and secondly, we have the device owner method. So profile owner is kind of like a way of it's just actually mostly used in the case of personal devices or BYOD. So if you have a personal device, if you have a BYOD kind of situation where the users brings in their own devices and you're going to have to deploy some work applications onto their personal devices, you could actually go for the profile owner method. The major advantage of using a profile owner is that there's going to be a containerization of data that's on their devices, which means every application or every configuration that you push out to these personal devices, it would be right within a container. So you can actually ensure that the data that's being pushed out to these devices are actually right within the container. It doesn't really move out from the container. And one other highlight is that it doesn't really require your devices to be reset as compared to the device owner method. So in device owner, your devices would have to be first reset. So so once you do a factory reset, you would have to set the device out from right from the scratch. So device owner method is mostly used in the case of corporate-owned devices. So this actually offers lots of capabilities. There's actually it's actually really good if you actually are using Android Enterprise management, and if you're enrolling devices as a device owner, it would actually give you lots of control over your generic Android devices. So I'm going to play a video which actually would describe how you could configure the Android Enterprise. So deployment actually starts right from the admin tab. From the admin tab, just click on the enroll option, and you got two options up there. So one is choose a managed domain, and another is Google domain. So it's depending upon the kind of configuration or kind of Google account that you're using to set up the Android Enterprise account. So click on enroll, sign into the Google account using the credentials, and click on get started. Put in your account or organization details and agree to terms and conditions, confirm, and complete the registration, and you have the Android Enterprise account set up. It's that easy. It's probably going to take about 2 or 3 minutes to have the Android Enterprise account set up. And as I mentioned previously, it's actually a free service from Google. There's no additional charge for it. So once you have enrolled your organization in the Android Enterprise, you could start to deploy your devices on the Enterprise. So speaking of enrollment itself, there are several different ways you could get your devices onboarded to the MDM. It's not just that we only support Android Enterprise. No, we actually do have other methods as well to get your devices enrolled on the MDM. So this can be classified into 3 different methods. So first up, we have the Zero Touch. Secondly, we have Enterprise. And third, we have other generic options available. So zero touch is mostly used in the case of where you have a large number of devices to manage or a large number of devices to deploy. So let's say you have maybe 300 or 500 or maybe over 1,000 devices to deploy. It's probably going to be, it's really tedious if you would want to have physical access to these devices. So you probably would want something that's much more seamless and, kind of like out from the box kind of setup. There's going to be, interaction required from the end users or even from the admin. So we got three options currently here. So one is zero touch enrollment from Google. So this is going to be supported on just specific kinds of device models and specific device vendors. So first thing that you want to ensure is that your device and device vendor that you're looking at does support the zero touch configuration from Google. And a second method is the Samsung Knox enrollment, which is from Samsung itself. So if you have Samsung devices to manage, it's probably easier if you have the integration with the Samsung Knox. All you require is a Samsung Knox portal and also Samsung account to deploy these devices. And the third option here is your Android ROM configuration. This would involve your device manufacturer installing Hexnode as a system application. So Hexnode would actually have all the privileges. And once the device actually turned on for the first time, connected to a Wi-Fi network, just in the case of other zero touch configuration, it's going to download, it's going to install, set up your Android devices on your Hexnode MDM account. And second method that we have for deployment is the Android Enterprise, as we said earlier. So Android Enterprise solution doesn't really mean that it's just about the Android Enterprise. They actually do have directory-based configurations available as well. This means that if you have Active Directory or Azure Active Directory or even G Suite accounts currently in your organizations, you could actually tie up these with Hexnode account, and you could use this for authentication purposes to deploy your devices. And coming to the third option, there are other generic options available to get your devices enrolled. So one of the most common ways is to just download the Hexnode MDM application from the Google Play Store, or just download the APK version of the Hexnode MDM application. Open up the application, put in the server address, and just allow the permissions to get your device enrolled. And we also do support enrollment using SMS and email-based authentication. So you could just send a request to the end users with the instructions and the credentials to get your devices enrolled. And lastly, we also do support the QR code-based enrollment for Android devices, where you could just scan a QR code from your email or from the Hexnode account and get your devices enrolled. All right, so coming to the management of Android devices. So this can be classified into 6. So we got the application management, we have security management, content management, kiosk management, identity and access management, and also the expense management for Android devices. So let's start with the application management. So the best practice is to have your devices enrolled through the Android Enterprise program. So it's actually going to have a key advantage over non-enterprise management. So if you're actually using Android Enterprise, it's probably easier to deploy the store applications out to these devices. So let's take the case if you don't really have an Android Enterprise account configured. You would still be able to manage the applications. So we mainly support management of store applications, enterprise applications, and also web applications, which can be deployed in kiosk mode. So if you have added your application as a mandatory application in the policy, you could have these applications remotely deployed, and also you could have them silently updated as well. So silent installation of applications is currently supported in the case of Samsung Knox devices and LG Gate devices, and also QSR devices. And also, if your device does have root permissions or root privilege, you would be able to remotely deploy the enterprise applications to these devices. And next comes the blacklist and whitelist of applications. So this is again configured just like what we saw in the case of iOS devices. This can be configured from the policies. So the option to configure or the option for blacklist and whitelist, it's actually in the Android section of the policy. So if you just take you back to the policies page. All right, in the policies, just go to the Android part. And if you scroll down under App Management, we have the blacklist and whitelist option. It's quite similar to what we did so earlier for iOS devices. So we have the blacklist and the whitelist feature, which is currently available. And again, for non-Android enterprise devices, this feature is just supported in the case of Samsung Knox devices. And next option we have is the option to create an app catalog. It's quite similar to what we saw earlier for iOS devices again. So app catalog is actually it's currently available in the app in the Hexnode application itself. So just open up your Hexnode application and you will see an option that says catalog. If you swipe from the left, you would have access to the side menu. Just click on that and click on the app catalog, and you should be able to access the app catalog from there. And in the case of Android enterprise devices, apart from the above-mentioned configurations, we actually do support a few other. It actually offers a lot more other advantages. So the major advantage of using Android Enterprise in terms of app management is that you should be able to manage the applications that are from the store. So in the case of non-enterprise or non-Android enterprise devices, if you're trying to deploy store applications, this would actually mean that this would give the prompt to a user to install the application. You would have to click on the prompt or notification in order to get your app installed. But if you're actually using Android Enterprise account, you actually can deploy the applications directly to your devices, even if you don't really have a Play Store account tied, or if you don't really have a Google account tied to your devices. And second advantage is the option to customize the Google Play Store. So earlier, we had an option where you could just configure the app catalog. So for this actually was part of the app Hexnode application itself. But using Android Enterprise account, you could actually make the Play Store itself to be kind of like an app catalog, which means when the user opens up the Play Store account or a Play Store on their devices, they would just see a limited number of applications which has been approved by the administrator of the account. So let me tell you how this actually is going to work. So if you just go back to the app inventory or the apps tab on Hexnode, you would have the catalog option where you just add the catalog, and along with that, right next to it, we have the store layout, which can be defined from here. So whichever application that you want to add in the Play Store, you have to first add in the store layout. So just create a layout here. You could actually customize the way the store is going to appear. So if you want to have some applications added as a cluster, you could just provide a name for it and add a required application, and you could just save this configuration to your devices. So once you have this catalog and the store layout, it's just a matter of going back to the policy. And if you just go back to the policy under Android app management, we have the app catalog option. Just tie up the app catalog here in the policy. And once you save it to your devices, the user opens up the Play Store and they would see the list of applications that's been added in the catalog. And next option we have is to publish enterprise applications as a private application. This means that if you have an enterprise application like an APK, instead of having to deploy these as APK file itself, you could rather have them uploaded to the Play Store account as a private application so that it's just going to be accessible to the people within your organization. So once you've done that, you could just deploy these applications just like a normal store application. And other key highlight of using the Android Enterprise is the ability to block applications. So earlier we saw an option for Samsung devices where you could just block some applications in the policies. So using Android Enterprise, pretty much any Android devices could have this configuration for blacklist and whitelist. And Then we have the option to set the configurations for applications. So apart from being able to deploy the applications, you also would get the option to set the configurations and also the permissions for applications. So getting the applications managed through Android Enterprise is slightly different. So you have to start from the app inventory. So if you just go to the app inventory, let me just pull up my portal up here. So when you go back to the app inventory, just click on Add Apps, choose Manage Google Apps, and it's going to bring up this window, which is, if you ask me, it's quite similar to the Google Play Store account. So just search for the application that you want to deploy out to these devices. Let's say if you want to have Gmail pushed out to your devices, just search for the application up here, and you get the results straight out from the App Store. Select the application, click on Approve. Allow the permissions and click on Confirm and save it, and the app has been approved. There you go. So once you have approved the application, it's going to be added to the app inventory, and all you got to do is just go back to the policy, and you can have this application deployed to the devices through the policy under Android. Just add these applications as a mandatory application. Or otherwise, if you want to deploy the configurations for these applications, just click on App Configuration, click on the Configure button, add new configuration, and you could just select the application here from the list. Select Gmail, and you have these configurations that are currently available for Gmail. So along with pushing out the applications to your devices, you also would get the option to deploy the configurations for these applications as well. And we also do have the option to push out the permissions for the applications. So if you just look just under the app configuration, we have the app permissions option, which would allow you to deploy the permissions. So if you want to change the permission, or if you want to allow or deny the permissions for some of the applications, you could use these options here. And again, these configurations are currently supported just in the case of Android Enterprise devices. All right, so that's about the app management. Let's now move over to the next part. So this table here shows you how about the kind of application that can be deployed to your devices and how they would actually get installed and updated on your devices. So if they're actually store applications, the best option is to push them out to Android Enterprise on devices. And these installations are going to be silent, which means these won't really have to intervene with the app installation. And the same goes for updates as well. But if you're trying to push out enterprise applications to your devices, the best option is to probably go for Samsung Knox devices, LG Gate or Kyocera devices, or maybe a ROM and roll device. Again, the installation of enterprise applications for these mentioned devices is going to be silent, but for generic devices, user would be getting a prompt or notification. And lastly, we have the web-based application which can be deployed to your devices in kiosk mode. And again, the installation process or pushing out the process is actually going to be silent. All right, so next up we have security management. So we have the basic management functionalities and we have the advanced management functionalities. So basic restrictions or basic management functionalities would actually include the option to restrict some functionalities such as the camera access, preventing them from installing new applications or having network connectivity related restrictions. So these configurations are again part of the policies. So if you just go to the policies, you got the option down here that says restrictions and the advanced restrictions. So these actually would allow you to prevent access to certain functionalities. So if you want to prevent them from having access to the camera, if you don't want to be able to install applications, or maybe if you want to have the Wi-Fi forwards on your devices, GPS forwards on devices, you got all these options up here in the basic and the advanced restrictions. And one of these options are actually involves you to prevent them from removing the MDM profiles from the devices. So if you don't really want users to be able to remove the MDM from the devices, you have these options in here as well. And again, we have lots of other options available in the restrictions, like we have the ability to enforce GPS or even prevent them from turning off the or sending mock locations to their devices. And in terms of advanced management with Android Enterprise, although along with the above-mentioned configurations, we actually do support additional functionalities such as the containerization for personally owned devices. So that's probably one of the major highlights of using Android Enterprise. You could have the containerization for personally owned devices, which means you could ensure the work information or work data on your devices are secured. And you could have a separate password rule set for the work profile, which means when you're trying to remotely configure or when you're trying to remotely set up the password on devices, you also could set up a password for the password for the work container. And this configuration is currently in the policy. If you just go back to the policy, we have the AFW work container password up here. Click on configure, and again, it's quite similar to what we saw earlier for iOS, where you could define the password rules. So you could set the password age, the kind of password that you would want, password history, etc. And there are some privileges which are actually specific to app management. Again, these are part of the policy itself. So these configurations are currently available in the restrictions policy. It's actually in the advanced restriction. So all you got to do is just configure the advanced restrictions. So under advanced restriction, if you scroll all the way down, you'd have the app-based management settings. So if using these options here that says install application, uninstall application, you actually can prevent users from getting new apps installed to your devices. You could prevent users from taking off the existing application devices. You even can prevent access to the Google Play Store entirely on these devices. All right, and lastly, we have the option to regulate the factory reset protection. The factory reset protection is kind of like a built-in functionality on every Android device out there. This actually is kind of like a feature which lets you, so let's say most devices these days would actually have a Google account tied to these devices. So in case you do a factory reset, it's actually going to ask the user to sign in back to the existing Google account on the devices for the purpose of security. So using Android Enterprise, you get the option where you could just prevent, or you could just add yourself or perhaps the admin account added as one of the accounts on devices, and user would have to use that information or credential for the admin in order to unlock these devices after factory reset. So it's kind of like going to add a security layer on these devices. And the option for factory reset protection is actually in the restriction itself. So taking it back to the restrictions, we got the factory reset protection option down here. So we got three main options up here. We have the default option, we have the bypass factory reset protection option, and we have the disable factory reset protection option. So if you want to disable the factory reset protection completely on your devices, if you don't really want users to be able to, be able to put in the previous account in case the device is reset, you can just disable that option. But otherwise, you have the option to bypass factory reset protection by this option here. Just add a user account or add a Google account option up here, and they're going to have to put in that information on their devices to unlock these devices after reset. All right, so next up we have the kiosk management. So mainly we have two kinds of kiosk modes for Android devices. We have a single app kiosk mode and we have the multi-app kiosk mode, just like in the case of iOS devices. So single app kiosk, just like in iOS, you'd be able to lock it down to just one application. This app is going to be open all the time. If you press the home or back button, it's just going to stay right within the application. And we also do have multi-app kiosk where you just restrict the devices to just few applications, which has been added by the administrator. And apart from this, we have the background application, which is kind of like adding the applications in the kiosk, but users won't really see the application, even though this can be accessed through the kiosk. So it's just going to be added in the background and not in the foreground of the kiosk. And we also do have the kiosk screensaver and digital signage options available. So in case you want to put up a video or put up an image in the kiosk and as a screensaver, you could use the kiosk screensaver option. And if you're into the advertising industry or something similar, you have the option for digital signage, or you could just play some videos or play some images in a loop, and have some background music added to it. It's mostly used in the case of advertising or branding purposes. So let me just explain to you how the kiosk actually would work in the case of Android devices. So to configure the kiosk, you got to go into the kiosk lockdown part in the policy. And if you just scroll down, you got the single app and the multi-app options for Android devices. So to configure a single app kiosk, just click on the single app option up here. Click on configure, plus button, select the app, and you just have to choose the application here from the list. But otherwise, if you want to go for a multi-app kiosk, go for a multi-app kiosk option, configure, plus button, add the application. I'll just maybe try to add a couple of applications here. So let's say I want to go for, let's go for Facebook perhaps, and Gmail. Select those two applications. And that's how the kiosk is going to look like on these devices. Of course, there's going to be a wallpaper in the background, but apart from that, they would just have access to those two icons in the kiosk. Everything else is not going to be accessible to the user. And unlike in the case of iOS devices, where there's going to be a phone and a settings option, Android doesn't really quite have that limitation. You could have any number of applications here. You could remove any application here from the kiosk. And background applications, as I stated earlier, it's going to allow you to have access to the applications without really having an icon for the application in the kiosk. Just click on configure and you should be able to add the application here. And then we have the digital signage option and the screensaver option down here. So screensaver, it's quite simple actually. So if you do have the files like the videos or images currently on your computer, or it'd be that on your device itself, you could have them. If you have the files currently on your computer, and if you want to transfer them over to your devices, you could remotely do them over the air. Or if you have your applications, or if you have your videos or images currently on your smartphones or tablets, you could provide a direct path to the file on your devices, and it's just going to access those files, and it's going to allow you to play these images or videos as a screensaver. And there are several different options available in here. So if there are actually videos, you actually could trim these videos to the required length. So if you have a 1 minute video and if you just want a part of the video to be played in loops, you actually can trim this through the policy here. If you want to mute the audio, you could do that. Maybe add a custom background music to it. And you could actually have this in custom display view. So if you want to be displayed in full screen, or if you want to shuffle the videos or images, you have all these options down here. And digital signage displays are actually quite similar. If you compare it with the screensaver option, it's actually going to appear quite similar in terms of configurations. So essentially, it's actually a screensaver itself, but there is actually one key advantage or one key feature here that's actually going to make it stand apart. So when you actually look at digital signage displays, the user doesn't really have to intervene with the devices. There's going to be non-interactive devices. So the touch and the navigation keys on these devices are going to be disabled, which means it's just going to be used for the purpose of playing some videos, or just for the purpose of advertising, I should say. And apart from this, we also do have the peripheral settings in here in the policy. So the kiosk itself is pretty much locked out, which means you won't really have access to any of the settings or any of the configurations in the policies. So in case if you want some level of access on these devices, like if you want them to be able to connect to a new Wi-Fi network, or if you want them to be able to configure new Bluetooth device, or even change screen brightness, for example, you have the peripheral settings in the policy. So what it's going to do is it's going to add a custom settings option in the kiosk so that users could just go in and they could just choose a required application or choose the option from the peripheral settings. It's just going to be like a custom settings option in the kiosk, which they could click on and access in the kiosk. All right, so that's about the single app and multi-app kiosk. And apart from this, we also do support the website kiosk for Android devices. So website kiosk, it's kind of like a variation of single app or multi-app kiosk mode. So you would be able to add shortcuts to web pages in kiosk mode. So if you just want to access or if you want to allow access to just one or a few websites, you could first create a web application for the website. And this again can be done here from the policy. So the best practice is probably to go for Hexnode Browser Lite, which actually would support advanced configurations on them. So there are 3 different ways you could actually have this web applications opened up. So first up, you have the Hexnode Browser Lite. Secondly, we have Hexnode Browser. And thirdly, you can use a third-party application or third-party browser. So Hexnode Browser Lite is actually a basic browser, which would be found on pretty much any Android device out there. So you actually can set it to open up the website in both single app and multi-app kiosk mode using Hexnode Browser Lite. Let me just take you back to the policy here. All right, so in this kiosk lockdown, we have this option down here that says website kiosk settings. So this actually would just allow you to configure or allow you to set how you would want to open up this website or what application you would want to use to open up this web applications. So we have the Hexnode Browser Lite here. So if you don't really have any other browsers installed, or if you don't really have the Hexnode application installed to your devices, or Hexnode Kiosk browser app installed to your devices, it would actually open up by default in Hexnode Browser Lite. And next browser we have in here is the Hexnode Kiosk browser. It's actually built on top of Chromium, so pretty much it's actually going to allow you to, it's going to behave much similar to Google Chrome itself. So pretty much any website that's supported on Google Chrome would be supported on Kiosk browser as well. And you get options to open that up in single tab and multi-tab. And both these options actually would support, web view or web applications in full screen mode, which means user won't really know if they're actually on the browser. They would just see the entire website without any address bar or anything at the top of the screens. The third option here is to go for a third-party browser. So if you want your web applications to be opened up in maybe a Chrome application, for instance, or any other browsers, for instance, you gotta first add the required application, say for example the Chrome, as a background application here. And once you've done that, you just have to search for the application here from the browse option. And we also do provide an option here to whitelist the applications. So, whitelist the websites. So if you just want to, if you want to allow access to maybe a few other websites apart from the white ones that you have added as a web application, you could just come down here and add them as a whitelist in the website. And apart from this, we also do have the advanced website kiosk settings option, which includes configurations for most of the configurations are actually for Hexnode Browser Lite, and in the recent update, we actually started rolling out these options for Hexnode Kiosk Browser as well. So these options here is actually going to include some customizations for the browsers. So you actually can maybe it's going to decide how these websites are actually going to behave once they're opened up in the web in the browsers. So in here we have options which would prevent it's going to allow you to clear the cache from the browser, or it's going to set the appearance of the browser on your devices. You could have your page refresh automatically and go back to the home page after set period of inactivity, or have them reloaded based upon network connectivity and so on. You have the options to enable JavaScript, or you could actually decide if the videos or files can be uploaded to your devices through the browser and so on. So in other words, it's actually going to offer an advanced kind of configurations for the browser itself. You could actually customize the way the browser should behave, or how the website should behave once you're loaded on the browser. Next up, we have the identity and access management, which includes the configurations for AD and Azure Active Directory. So using Active Directory integrations, we do offer the ability to, you just have to pull the list of users from the Azure Active Directory or local Active Directory into Hexnode, and you could just use the credentials to authenticate the enrollment process. And we also do support the certificate management, so just quite similar to what we have for iOS devices. So you could push out certificate, and this configuration is currently supported in the case of Samsung safe devices and not for generic devices. And the managed Google Play, which we saw earlier, is going to allow you to customize the way the Google Play is actually added to your devices. So you could add custom applications to it. You could decide how the Play Store should behave once they're actually deployed on the enterprise, so that users, once they open up the Play Store, they would just see a limited number of applications that's been pre-approved by the administrator. And app catalogs actually would ensure that users wouldn't really have access to all the applications, but just to the ones that are pre-approved by the administrator. And then we have the content management, which would allow you to remotely transfer files to specific locations on devices. So we have the content management, which would allow you to transfer pretty much any files or any documents to your devices. So we have a feature that's going to allow you to deploy the files. It's actually in the policies. So if you go to the policy, we got the file management for we got the file management up here for Android devices. So just go to Android, and if you scroll down, we got the file management. Click on that. Click on Configure, and you get to put in the job path to which the file has to be transferred to on these devices. So just by the file path here, and also you could just search for the file from here. So first up, you gotta make sure is to add the application or add the files or documents that you want to transfer to your devices in the admin tab. So if you actually go to the admin, you would have an option where you could just upload the files. You have a section that's called as file management. So scroll down, and you have file management down here. Click on that, and you could just upload the files here in the inventory. And once you've done that, you could just go back to the file management option and search for the file that you want to have access to. All right, so that's all the configurations we have, or that's all the management we do support for Android devices currently. So now we'll have the Q&A session for Android devices. So if you do have questions, just put that up in the chat, or you put that up in the Q&A portion in the Zoom meeting window, and we're going to be able to get back with all the best answers. All right, so we got a few of the questions coming in from the users. So first question is from Jerry Garner. So as Samsung the only platform that allows remote control of mobile devices, we have Verizon Wireless Ellipsis and have found view only is only the option for devices. So currently we support remote control for both Samsung and also rooted Android devices. All the remote view support on pretty much any Android device that's running on Android 5 or later versions. So remote control just for Samsungs and rooted devices, but remote view it's for pretty much any Android device out there. And the same question has been stated by Dalber as well. Remote control, which device it requires? Yes, as I mentioned, it's actually going to be specific to Samsung Knox devices and also rooted Android devices. And we got a question from Danny Main. When is it going to be able to use a keyboard instead of device keyboard? I guess you're actually referring to the remote view functionality or remote control functionality again. So we currently do not support the keyboard on remote control, but it's actually something we are working on. So in future, you could definitely expect this to be on Hexnode, but we don't quite have a timeline for it yet. And we have a new question coming in from an anonymous participant. So if I have multiple Android devices, each using single app to display their own web page, do they need individual policies? So yes, these devices, if they have to load individual websites, if they have to be on different websites on these devices and kiosks, you're going to have to configure separate policies, one for each device. But if they're actually on the same website, if you have just one common website that you would want to load on all the devices, if you just have one policy on all these devices. All right, so that's all the questions we have for this session. So I guess we'll wind up for now. So, well, all right, so this session is currently being recorded, so it's going to be emailed back to you. So we're going to be sharing the link to the this webinar session out to your email addresses. And also, as I mentioned, it's actually going to be like a two-part webinar. Next part is about Mac and Windows management. It's going to be scheduled for next week. We're going to be sending the invites out to you again. All right, so until next time, this is Robert Smith signing off. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.